Okay, fantastic. So, Be'ezras Hashem Yizbarach. Yeah? Let us jump into Tzidkas HaTzaddik Be'ezras Hashem. And we're taking a look at Tzidkas HaTzaddik Ois Chaf. And Reb Tzadok is still in the middle of the part of the Sefer where he's going through the various Gemaras in the beginning of Brachas and revealing deeper spiritual principles from behind what appear to be just on the surface halachic sugyas. And one of those halachic sugyas has to do with the Shalosh Mishmaris Havi Alayla. The three Mishmaris, the three watches of the Laila of the night. And the Gemara wants to explain the different signs for what the Zmanim are. And there's a bit of a back and forth as to whether these three signs are the beginning of the Mishmaris, are they when the Mishmaris end, right? And there's a Manda Amar that says it's the beginning of the first the end of the first Mishmar, the middle of the middle Mishmar, and then the beginning of the third Mishmar. Another Shita holds that no, it's the end of all of the Mishmaris, which is going to become important, as we'll see in number 28, Chav Ches. But Al Kapanim, these are the three Simanim. The Simanim for the three Mishmaris are, number one, in the first Mishmar, Chamar Noyer, the donkey brays. I think that's the word, right? Brays, that's what a donkey does. The second Mishmar, dogs bark. And the third Mishmar has two signs. Sign number one is that a Tinak Yonik Mishtei Imai, right? That the infant is nursing from the mother. And Isha Misaparis and Bala. The wife is chatting with her husband. Okay, and that's the Mishmar closest to dawn. So says Reb Tzadok, let's try to get a little bit of a deeper understanding of what these Mishmaris are. So the Tzadok says, Ika Mishmaris Berakia. There are three Mishmaris in Shamayim. And the Gemara says that those Mishmaris in Shamayim are sort of reflected in the three Mishmaris on earth that are then hinted to in the donkey braying, the dog barking, and the other two Simanim we said. But Reb Tzadok reads it in a different way. It says it isn't just there are Mishmaris Berakia, like in Shamayim. He says, Ledivrei Rikiyim, with things that have to do with heaven, heavenly things. There are three different stages to spiritual growth. That's how Reb Tzadok understands it. Ratzalayim ala avodas Hashem Yizbarach means three different stages of serving Hashem. Ki heichi de'ika ba'ara, in the same way that there are simanim in the earth, right? B'inyanam apchusim va'avodas ha'adama, with lowly things, va'avodas ha'adama, things that relate to this worldliness. Kain mamish dugmasai, we find the same three simanim are hinting to these nekudas. Umimenu nukach la'avad Hashem, like the pasuk says, a person has to take the right message for what the avodah is at each of these particular three times. So what are these three times? So he says, Siman l'davar mishmar aleph is chamar noyer. The first siman is the donkey braying. So what's the depth of that? Says the tzaddik, ha-chaymer dugmas chamar, right? So the obvious remez is chamar is a donkey, but chaymer chumrius is gashmias, right? So that's going to be the lowest madrega that talks about physicality. Al derech sha'amru, right? When Chazal wanted to talk about an Eved Kanani, right, who's almost in a certain sense considered like an animal from the standpoint of the physicality, so the lashon used in the Gemara is am hadoyim lechamar. Right, because he says Shvulachem Payim Achamar. He was referring to Eliezer and Yishmael when Avram Avinu went with Yitzchak up to the Akedah, and the Chamar was the Eved that they had brought. Right, because Chamar, not that he's a donkey, but Chamar means Chumrius. Right, and that's a person who's more stuck in Gashmiya. So we see from there that Chamar obviously wasn't saying he's a donkey. Chas v'shalom, Chaviv Adam Shenever B'Tsalem. Every human being is created in the image of Hashem, so we can't call a person a donkey. He explains that it's because of the Chumrius. That was the remez of why he hinted to this person as a chamar, but it meant chumrius. Gam hu noyer kechamar lemasay hamitzvus beklei hamaisa. Step one is a person who's really stuck in gashmias, not able to relate to tefillah, not able to relate, as we're going to see, to Torah. Step one is, the way he's going to explain it, chesed beguf. Just do a kindness for someone. The Reb Tzadok says that's step one. On a physical level, just involve yourself, if you can, in some ma'aseh chesed. That's already like a doorway out. Because it's not overtly spiritual. Let's say a person is not feeling like capable of connecting in that way. but ben adam l'chaveroi is something that's much more accessible. And that's called avoda beklei hamaisa. That's just the practical thing of the klei hamaisa for a person to involve his own body in doing the mitzvahs, because what was holding him back was the chumrius. But when a person goes now and gets involved, as we're going to see, in gemilas chasadim, so that's step number one, right? So that's the first mishmar, is chamor noyer, is even the donkey, right, who's so stuck in gashmias, noyer kechamor, is crying out, but he's not able to even daven. How does he cry out? With the chumrius, right? By going ahead and using the guf to do a maisa mitzvah, right? Particularly, as we're going to see, gemilas chasadim. The second stage base is klavim tzeyakim. The dogs are barking. What's this a remes to? The Zara writes, tzvachin kekalba. The Zara Kaddish says that when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, people who are on a little bit of a lower level are tzvachim kekalba. They cry out like dogs. What does it mean they cry out like dogs? What's the proper way to daven in Rosh Hashanah? What are we supposed to be focusing on? What's the whole inyan of Rosh Hashanah? Is malchus, right? Is davening begadlus demoichin. It's not for my own stuff. It's malecha kol ha'olam kulu b'chveidecha. The whole thing is psukim that are hinting to la'asid lavoi, what the world will look like, right? Chala arisha kula ka'ashan tichle kisavim mishal zadim in arts. All of those tefillas yeda kapal k'atabalta v'chulei. So the Zohar Kadosh says very sharp words about a person who's not plugged into that consciousness and is so focused on themselves that the whole Rosh Hashanah they're busy. They're not thinking about like the bigger picture. They're thinking about what they need. Begashmias, havlan chaye, havlan mezoyne, havlan bane, havlan whatever a person needs. So the Zohar Kadosh very sharply says that's what dogs do. They bark, and it's as if they're barking, saying have. Right? That's how a dog barks. Have means give. So he says, "Keklavim sayakim have." That's not a way to come into a relationship with Hashem. Imagine a parent's whole relationship with a child is that the child is always saying, give. It's not really a relationship. Maybe more often it's the opposite way around. Imagine a parent's whole relationship with a kid is that he just says to the kid, give me nachas, give me. Like that's not. It's not a real relationship.
Giving of the religion of a child's birth is taking.
Right.
That's very sharp words.
Very sharp, right? Because the Zohar Kadosh assumes that we're grown up, right? And that's his point. His point is that maybe it's good for children to have a relationship with Hashem on that level, but hopefully when a person, that's exactly the point, when a person gets to a certain age, the relationship has to evolve, where it's not just what can I get from you and what can you get from me. It's can we dream together? Can we build something together that's bigger than maybe both of us? And that's what Rosh Hashanah is supposed to be. So the Zohar uses the word to describe this thing as tzvachim kekalba, screaming out, shouting out like a dog. B'tfila, and it's a reference to tfila. And another remez to this, that dogs are connected to tfila, but obviously not on the highest level, but it's still connected to tefillah, because v'aklavim azei panim, the pasuk says dogs are brazen-faced, and we find that v'chein chutzpah b'tefillah klapi shmaya mahanya. We find that there's chutzpah on the level of tefillah. That the Gemara says chutzpah b'tefillah klapi shmaya mahanya. We find cases where there were tzaddikim who went and spoke in a way of almost like in a certain sense chutzpah. The most, I think, obvious example that comes to mind is Choni Amagal, right? Who they came to him afterwards and they said, "Mali chayni ata, we would put you in nidui, we would put you in chayrim, because who talks to Hashem like this? Drawing a circle, like we threatening Hashem with a hunger strike, like what? Parenthetically, I was just reading a book over Shabbos about people who were doing protests on behalf of Soviet Jewry in the probably in 60s, 70s. And there was one guy, so not all of them were like the most pure with their motives, and a lot of politics and different organizations and different approaches. So there's one guy who was ostensibly doing a hunger strike, but everyone got the feeling that like there's something. So the guy who's writing the book spoke to somebody who was mamish spending time. He said, he's eaten more than you've eaten the last month. Like this big Russian guy is doing a hunger strike, and the whole at night he's just fressing, So what are you doing? A hunger strike to Hashem? drawing a circle and you say, you better give us rain, if not, I'll never leave this circle. Okay, Michael Taivas, don't leave the circle. But it worked. It worked because chutzpah klape shmaya mahanya. There is an element of tefillah when it's well placed and it's betamt and it comes out of a place of desperation. Right? Another example, the Gemara in Pesachim says, and we've said this many, many times, like a certain consciousness. And again, most people don't talk this way, we don't learn this way. But the Gemara says, darshaning on the pasuk in Tehillim is Zamru, right, Lamnatseach Mizmar, Zamru Lemisha Menatzchen Asay V'Sameach. Sing to Hashem, who when conquered, he's happy. Hashem wants to be conquered. Rabbi Nachman says in Likutei Moharan, he can't imagine why we let Hashem be goyzer gzeiros on the world. He uses a lashon like that. He says, tzaddikim must not let Hashem get away with it. Like, because in Yiddishkeit, the tzaddikim are conceptualized as having this kind of panim b'panim. We spoke about Avram Avinu and Sedai, remember? Right? A few weeks ago, Thursday night. Right? A real face-to-face relationship with Hashem. Me moishel be, the pasuk says, tzaddik moishel be. Right? That tzaddik is moishel be yirasolikim. And so that's another element of why you would have the connection between a kalba, a dog, and tefillah. Because a kelev is azipanim, and chutzpah b'tefillah klape shmaya is mahanya, kameshukasa b'tainis, like the Gemara says in Tainis. And here's a third thing. The Gemara in Shabbos, because he had whole shas on his fingertips. So the Gemara in Shabbos says, "Les da'anya mikalma." There is no one more impoverished than a dog. Because the dogs are slinking around the back alleys looking for scraps. A dog is never satisfied. A dog is always needy. Always needy. That's what the Gemara says. But the Gemara in Nedarim says, what's the strongest form of poverty, impoverishment? It's not money. Ein ani ela min hadas. And das chasarta ma kanisa. Person lacks das, then it doesn't matter what they have, they don't have anything. So the dogs are aniyim, but aniyim is das, ani bedas. And you know what ani bedas is? Ve'ein le ela tefillah. That's a reference to someone who has no Torah, he has no das. What does he have left? Is tefillah. Like it says in the Medrash Rabbah, Parsha Lameches in Shmois. It's a very beautiful medrash, actually. It's a medrash on the pasuk Chu imachem devarim v'shuvu al Hashem, and it says that Klal Yisrael came to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and said in Galus, "What can we do?" This is going to get a little bit too warm. If you don't mind, just lowering it a bit. They came to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and they said, "What should we do?" It used to be that we had Nesiim, Tzaddikim, Kahanim. They brought karbanis to be mechaper for us, and we don't have karbanis anymore. So Hashem said, "Chu imachem devarim v'shuv al Hashem," referring to Divrei Torah. And then Klal Yisrael says, "We're aniyim in adas. We can't learn anymore." It gets to a point in Galus where sometimes you can't even learn. Even learning we don't have. So Hashem says the same pasuk again, "Chu imachem devarim v'shuv al Hashem." But this time, devarim is not talking about Divrei Torah. It's talking about Divrei Tefillah. So Reb Tzadok says, what do we see from there? That davening is for us a point when a person's ani min hadas. And so again, we're trying to see how the dog's barking is a bechina of avoda of tefillah, right? The first thing Chamar Noyer was the bechina of gemilas chasadim, the avodas haguf, just get involved in doing a good thing, volunteer for a gift downstairs, like just get involved in the community, do something begashmias. A higher madrega is the klavim tzeyakim. And now we're trying to find lots of different ways in which klavim tzeyakim is a remez to tefillah. So we learned, right, a few of them now. The first one was klavim tzeyakim have, and that's a low level, but it's still davening. A person is davening to get things from Hashem. Then we have the inyan of the klavim are azei panim, and chutzpah, which is azos afilu klape shmaya mahanya. That's tefillah, where a person can daven in such a strong azus way where they can get what they want. And the third element that we're connecting here is that the klavim are aniyim, and ein ani ela min hadas. What did the medrash say you do when you're an ani min hadas? You daven, right? Because chu imachem devarim of Torah is not relevant because a person feels they can't learn. You can daven. So he brings three separate rayas from all different parts of Torah to connect klavim to tefillah. Unbelievable thing.
Chutzpah and kelev is not necessarily a good connotation.
No, he has another piece, which we're not learning now, but he has another piece where he says that it moves from negative to positive. So Chamar Noyer is total Gashmi, is Tuma. And then Isha Mesaper Simbala is Klal Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tini Gyonik Mishtei Imai, as we're going to see in a minute, is the Bechina of Torah. That's totally good. And he says the Klavim have a Tzad Toiv and a Tzad Ra. What's the Tzad Toiv of the Klavim? Azos, heavy Az Kanomer. See, he says because there's Azos to Sitra Achra, but there could be Azos to Gedusha, Klavim, or the Midah of Azos, is the intermediary. Okay, so it can go both ways. Okay, that's the Bechina of Tefillah. That's Tefillah. Now Gimel, but the final highest stage is Tinak Yoinik. What is this a reference to? Hainu Torah. This is the highest level when a person is able to learn. They have clarity of mind. They have zitzfleisch. They can make the time. They're free from the tirdas that would prevent them from actually sitting and engaging with the text. You know, it takes Yishav to learn. Tefillah, you can throw up a tefillah, you can throw up a krechs, you know. Torah takes time, takes commitment, it takes pulling yourselves away from millions of other things you could have been doing now and to come out and to learn. Torah is a high level. And that's the highest madrega. Is the Tinak Yoinik. Hainu Torah Kamaisha Amru B'Gemara Beperak Arvi Psachim. This is what it says in Arvi Psachim, Mimasha Egel Roitza Linaik. Right? More than the Egel, right? So the whole thing over there, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai came to Rabbi Kiva and said, teach me Torah. Rabbi Kiva said, not in the mood, or something to that effect. I'm not teaching you. And he said, okay, I'm going to tell my father Yochai to be master you to the government. Like, you know, again, extreme ways of expressing how desperate he was to learn. And then Rabbi Kiva responded, he said, you think you're desperate to learn? More than the calf is desperate to nurse from the mother is desperate to nurse the calf because it's paining her. She's too full. She needs to get rid of the milk that she has. So Rabbi Kiva is saying, I want to teach you much more than you want to learn from me. And what's the mashal that's used? Nursing. See, he sees that as a reference to learning Torah. Right? Because Torah nimshalu l'chalav. Torah is also compared elsewhere to milk. V'isha misaper sembala hainu Torah k'maisha kasab yivamis samach gimel amid beis. That's a reference to our interaction with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where we're the kala and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the chasin, and that's Yom Chasunasai, is Matan Torah, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the Torah like a chasin and a kala. Raka Isha hi amenekes, but he says a little bit deeper, who's the Isha here in the context of nursing the baby? Hainu Gedolei Ta Yisrael. This is a reference to tzaddikim. V'tinoika shal beis rabban mekabel mehem, and the rest of Klal Yisrael are mekabel Torah from tzaddikim. Ve'im Torah va'avodah gemilas chasadim, and says Reb Tzadok, if we're keeping track, here we have the three amudim that the whole world depends on. Al shloisha devar ma'olam aymed, al Torah, v'al avodah, v'al gemilas chasadim. Says Reb Tzadok, gemilas chasadim is the first mishmar of Chamor Noyer. The second mishmar is tefillah. The third mishmar is Torah. And they're in ascending order. V'hem Torah v'avodah gemilas chasadim. V'chein Torah u'tefillah v'karbanos. Right, Hainamaisa b'shmais rabasham. This is what's enumerated there. They first tried with karbanos. They said, we don't have karbanos anymore. And then he said Torah. We don't have Torah anymore. So then do what you can do tefillah, which is keneged gemilas chasadim, sheim neged machshava dibur umaisa, that are further correlated to thinking, speaking, and acting. Obviously, maisa is going to be gemilas chasadim, maisa mitzvah. Speaking is going to be tefillah, and machshava is going to be mamek a person's mind in learning. Right, so ordinarily we would list them from the highest madriga, that's what we do, Torah, avodah, gemilas chasadim. In the Mishnah, when we rank them, we start from the highest. But over here, we're putting these symbols in the context of darkness, which is the context of a person who's having a hard time, a person who's struggling. The whole Sefer talks to a Jew who's stuck and who's can't find a way out. That's the whole Tzidkas HaTzaddik, is really addressing tshuva and a person who's stuck in averis and so on. In the context of darkness, says Reb Tzadok, you have to climb the ladder. So first start with a Maaseh Chesed. That's step one. What is a kind thing you can do for someone? And it's almost revelatory because most people don't think this way. Adrabah, maybe you try to jump, if not to Torah, which is the most common mistake, I'd say, right? That a person's in Yerida, just, okay, if you add on another Seder and open a Gemara. It's not the right Nakuda. Okay, maybe people go out and they'll throw up some tefillas to Hashem and cry out in his podudus, which is also great. There's so many chairs, Aiden, there's chairs behind you over there. Right? So that's one thing. But says Reb Tzadok, counterintuitive. That's not the first thing you do. The first thing you do is find someone to do a chesed with, which seems to be furthest away from that intimate, direct connection to Hashem that we're yearning for. Is there another paper? I didn't. No, sorry. Right. So there's like that's what you think. A person has this drive to just jump right back into it, and it just you're pulled over on the shoulder for whatever reason with your hazards on, and then you just blink them off, and boom, and you're back on the highway. And Reb Tzadok is giving us a good eitzah. He says, first you start slow, climb the ladder. You start first with avodah of kemilas chasadim. Then you graduate to tefillah, and it's a selfish tefillah, because not expected to go right away into dvekas. Have klavim tzeakim. And then a person graduates to finding a tzaddik and being able to sit and to be yoinik slowly but surely. So that's the setup. Now again, they're not mutually exclusive. A person obviously is not, letting go of their davening and of their learning if that's their seder. But the ikra avoda in a time of choshech, the mishmar rishayna, has to be chesed. That's Reb Tzadok's teaching over here. Okay, good. Any question? A question?
Usually, machshava dibur ma'isa, and machshava is, so to speak, the lowest because you're keeping it inside, and dibur ma'isa, you're expressing whatever you have inside. You bring it out to life. You're fulfilling it. So usually, in context of machshava dibur ma'isa is usually the ultimate, the best level. Usually, as far
in a certain sense, yeah.
In other places, but it seems over here. The Maisa is the lowest one, because Maisa resembles the Chesed, which is the Chamar, which is the first degree, and then Torah would be the Machshava, which it's a Hafuch as well. Yeah,
but I would say maybe it's not so Hafuch, meaning the ultimate is that it should be Maisa that's saturated with Machshava. Right, that's the ultimate. Right now, though, is Machshava, his brain is not there. Right, meaning they're all connected. But I think what he's explaining is that because a person's stuck in chumrius, which is the bechin of nefesh, right, which is ke'adam hu nefesh, just the guf, which is connected to maisa, right, and nefesh, ruach, neshama, right, is maisa, dibor, and machshava. So right now a person's stuck in nefesh. They're just they have no hargasha for ruchnius. They're not conscious of a higher inyanim zachin. They're not engaged at all. So Reb Tzadok says start there. Right, meaning if that's the level where you're at, where right now this world is really real to you, then find a way to do something good just outside of religion, just to help another human. That's step one. Then you move from Maisa, Nefesh, into Ruach, which is Dibur, but it doesn't mean you stop doing Chasadim. It just means now the Chesed is more connected to the context of your relationship with Hashem. Then finally you move up to Machshava, and that's a whole different world. Right, and then again, like it was saying, these two things are linked. Adrabah, there's nothing sweeter than a maisa that's infused with machshava. But a maisa without machshava is kaguf b'lei neshama. That's not the high madriga.
Nevertheless, if he's stuck, do a maisa even without machshava.
B'diuk. That's what Reb Tzadok is saying. You start with what you can do. That's right.
But we're saying starting on a low level, but then getting high over doing good to the poor.
That's right. Meaning he starts off just on a human level. You just do what you can do. Bein adam lechaveirah. That's nefesh. Then you'll use that as a ladder to climb and bring Hashem into the picture. And again, like he's saying, tefillah is bringing Hashem into the picture, but still in a low way. It's still have. It's still manipulative. It's still egocentric. Once Hashem's in the picture, then you have an opportunity to graduate, so to speak, into machshava, and then your tefillah is with machshava, and your maisa is with machshava. So again, you're not letting go of maisa and now rising into a different avoid, and letting go of that and now meditating the whole day. We want maisa, like you pointed out, dir b'tachtainim, that's the ikr, the externalization. That's why we're here on this planet, right? Is daika avoida begashmias, right? Neshama is begufim daika. but it has to be neshamas begufim. So when a person is just in the bechin of chaymer, then the maisa is not with kavanah, it's just maisa. But Reb Tzadok says, okay, where else are you going to start though? Start there, and then climb up into higher avodas. Okay?
I'm still struggling with the idea of tefillah being a low thing in Papa, because I think as Reb Nachman said that when the doctors told him that he abused his body and he could have had a good body, and he said if I would have done my spoilers earlier, that I wouldn't have had to kind of feel the CSF in his mind, which would indicate that spoilers was the highest level, which is a sense of tefillah.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, you talk over here like it's a very low thing, but it would appear from Reb Nachman that tefillah and spoilers was the highest of the highest.
You're right. The question is, what kind of hispodah it is?
So saying spoilers over here as much as...
Meaning, let me put it in other words. You could even have a person who, even on Rosh Hashanah, like let's use the most extreme, is asking for Banei Chayim Mezornei, and it's not have like the Zohar Kodesh is saying. Because what they're asking for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that should give him sustenance and parnasa, is so that they could play the role in the Gilui of Kvodei Yisbarach. That's right. And that's how Tefillah, I was saying, we learned that long piece in Reb Nosson. I think you were there for that. The 3 levels of Tefillah. Yeah. And so he goes... It's just for the Eibishter. The highest... No, Aiden. He says the highest level is where a person's daika not asking for anything. Gashmis, all you daven is that you should be able to get close to Hashem. That's the highest. Here we're saying, even if you daven and ask for things on a this worldly level, it depends with what consciousness you have. But again, since we're talking about a person who started off with nothing, just with chumriyas, it's not likely that their tefillah is going to be infused with neshama. So now they're in a place of have, right, which is low, klape. Once they then rise into machshava, which is neshama, then again, just like we said a minute ago, then machshava infuses the nefesh, and they still continue doing chesed, but now it's with Hashem. Now it's not just like a tikkun olam thing where, a person just on a lowly level is trying to do something nice. It's infused with neshama machshava. Your tefillah is infused with neshama machshava. Becomes totally different. You could even say, I would say, that even liman ha-Torah could still be a maisa, nefesh, klape, what we're talking about here. We're not just talking about a person who's able to crack open a Sanhedrin, or a Masechta somewhere and learn. Here we're talking about moichin. Person's able to rise out of the self, nefesh, and slowly but surely Hashem becomes part of the picture, and then finally you're back. Like where you realize it's not about me. There's a bigger picture. And then you channel that into your tefillah, and that into your maisa.
The example of a half-half tefillah is something along the lines of letting me enjoy my food, like really early, rather than zero spiritual, zero zero.
Rajlam, I'm working very hard.
Even for the sake of
I want to make another extra, few tens of thousands of dollars this year, whatever it is.
With no spiritual margins, just push it.
No, simple. Which by the way is Oicha Madrega. That's also a beautiful thing. Imagine how many people don't turn to Hashem for anything, don't believe that Hashem is the Makar HaBracha. We're not making light of that. And that's why it's a level here. It's a significant level. It's a level above just Maisa, because you have a relationship with Hashem. But once a person accesses the das of neshama, so then everything else takes on a new meaning.
Yaakov Avinu, after he has his dream, says, Lechem
Lechel, Bagad Lilbaish, which is like, you're saying have, right? But apparently, like you're saying, maybe after the dream, after there's moichin, so then that becomes the highest tefillah. Amazing. One of our avodas can ask for such a lowly thing, Beautiful. Yeah. Okay, so this is Tzidkas HaTzaddik Ois Chaf. Let's move a little bit forward. Ois Chaf Beis, he's still on the same topic here. Again, we're not learning every piece. Some of the pieces are very, very technical, and just we're trying to bring pieces that are Lov de Lamaisa more. So he says like this: Gimel Mishmaris Uzmanim Chalukim Have Alayla. We learned just now that the nighttime is split into 3 different stages. Ayin Sham Amad Beis, El Chamad Amar Dalid. There's a Manda Amar that says there are 4, not 3. Va'oisam ayoyde bino li'itim. Those tzaddikim who understand the chiluk between one time and another time. Yeshlem gam kin lechalek halayla legimel mishmaris uzmanim. Kol mishmar uzman b'fnei atzmai. People who are up in the nighttime, tzaddikim ha'ivdei Hashem, they need to know like in a literal sense, how the avodah changes from the first part of the night to the middle of the part of the night to the end part of the night. And that has to do with Tikkun Chatzos, Tikkun Rachel, Tikkun Leah. Then a person learns until Shachar. It was a whole process. I was just reminding myself, Tikkun Chatzos. Very few people do Tikkun Chatzos. It's you have to be a big tzaddik to do. Tikkun Chatzos is like it's not on people's radar. Maybe people don't even know there's such a thing called Tikkun Chatzos. Let's say. But to a person who does Tikkun Chatzos, you start to realize that Tefillah Shacharis is not the beginning of the day. No, in other words, yes. What I mean to say, but I mean more specific. When you get to the brachas of the Yerushalayim Ir Chavrach B'm Tashav, of a Sechazena Inenu, that's part B, right? That's the second. That's built on Tikkun Chatzos. Meaning, listen to how deep this is. Reb Tzadok has a beautiful, beautiful essay on the topic. Mamish, in the most poetic, beautiful ways. Maybe we'll learn it together one time. The whole inyan of waking up in the middle of the night, darkness, chashuch, lighting a candle, sitting on the floor, Tikkun Rachel, Tikkun Leah, mini Tisha B'Av, mamish, quiet, the whole world is sleeping, and you're the only person in the whole Hendon, let's say, one of a few, I imagine. Golders Green might be a few, no, I'm kidding. Whatever it is, but you're the only person in the whole city who's mamish, you're with Hashem, You're crying, everyone else is shluffing. They've watched their Netflix, they've eaten their sushi, and they're shluffing. You're sitting on the floor at Mamish Tisha B'Av in the middle of the winter. Then you learn. And then it comes time for Shacharis. You daven Shacharis Kivasikin, whatever it is. And as the night is turning into day, which is just a physical representation of the choshech of the tsar hashchina, the tsar ha'olam, of galus, like the Sefer HaChinuch says in the third mitzvah very beautifully, right? Ad halois hashachar, right, is a reference to the gula. Vayavik ish imai is galus ad halois hashachar, and all of a sudden dawn breaks, and then you're standing and you're in your talis and tefillin, which is like, the what gives you comfort, what holds you up. You're surrounded by alikus. You're in mikdash ma'at of a shul. You're around other people because in the nighttime you were just sitting there alone. And all of a sudden, then when you get to Shemana Esrei, after climbing through the letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei, from the last Hey of Birchas HaShachar, right, to the Vav of Psukei de Zimra, to the Hey of Birchas Krishma, and now you're at the apex. You're at the Yud. You're at a point where you're just whispering because you're mamish, face to face, and you express words of hope, of a sechazena inenu v'shuv chalitzim rachmim, and you've just experienced the movement from the darkness of night to the light of day. My goodness! Imagine if we had that experience once a month, once a year, right? Just imagine that. Go to sleep very early, get a full night's sleep, you wake up chatzos, and you're up for the day. But with the element of Tisha B'Av, which obviously Shavuos you don't have. That's how I imagine that's how Yiddishkeit was supposed to be. Like that's the ideal, and not even the ideal. That's how it was designed. And then it's a very impact. By the time you're finished Shacharis and you walk out into the day to go to work, my goodness, you just experienced all of Jewish history. What we learned Thursday night from Yaakov Avinu's vision from the Berditchever. You've taken the journey of immersing yourself in our hopes and in our dreams and in the darkness of where we are and the belief that we'll get where we need to go. It's a whole different Yiddishkeit. How many people experience that ever? And then we wonder why Shacharis doesn't work, for us. Shacharis is just the end of a long process. That really, if you want, begins with Mariv. That begins with Mincha. And it's this endless cycle of Yadea Bina Li'itim. So that's what he means. A person has to be sensitive to the different shifts that take place as the night passes, and we sort of get into the flow of Shacharis, right? and the darkening of the light, right? That whole process of the night beginning, the sun setting, what that is and what the avodah is. And then he says, "V'chein hava," the same thing is man. V'chein hu zman hagalus, chalak l'gimel itim elu. Nighttime doesn't just mean a night; it means the whole Jewish history. All of exile is split into these three mishmaris. And the Maharal has a long piece on this, where the Maharal, I don't know if it's in Gvuras Hashem, not remembering exactly right now, Netzach Yisrael maybe. The Maharal in one of his Svarim explains that the three Galuyos, the three stages of Galus are as follows. He says the first one, Chamar Noyer, the donkey braying. If I'm not mistaken, let me just think about this for a second if I remember. The donkey braying was where they didn't let us keep Torah and mitzvahs. Chumrius, I'm not sure exactly what remes he brings, how he brings it. They didn't let us keep mitzvahs. The second, they killed us begashmias, right? That's like Yavan and Chanukah and Purim. The second one was they wanted to wipe us out legamri, and that's the klavim seakim. Again, he brings Ramazim for this, how he knows which ones hint to which things. And then he says a very interesting thing. He says the final element is Tinak Yonik Mishtei Imai and Isha Misaperes and Bala. And he says the invoking of the relationship between a husband and wife is that sometimes there's kirva, but sometimes there's girish, there's pushing away. And he says that's where we are now in our relationship with the Ummah Sa'ila. It used to be that they were much more forthcoming about their policy on Jews, right? Now it's much more complicated because sometimes we're invited and welcome, and sometimes we're experiencing that now. Things are shifting, things are changing, times change, and that's the final gullus, is that relationship, husband and wife. But I once heard something very, very deep and beautiful. I think I may have mentioned in one of the shiurim, but it's good to review it. Our mishmar, currently closest to dawn, is the mishmar of Tinak Yonik Mishtei Imai and Isha Misaperes and Bala. That's where we are now. Isha Misaperes and Bala is a very, very deep thing, because usually it should be the opposite way around. Who do you expect to be doing the dibur? The mashpia, the husband. He's the one who's speaking, and the Isha is the Bechina of Makabel. She should be listening. Over here you have where it's daika, it doesn't say the Baal is Misaperes and Isha, or Mishdai. It's the Baal who's listening, and it's the Isha who's speaking. This is something similar to what the Gemara says, what the Zohar Kadosh says about Avraham, right? Shema b'koilo. Is that what you're just going to say? Well done. Right? What it says, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Avram, listen to her. Listen to Sarah. And the Gemara says, the Zohar Kadosh says, Sarah is the Bechina of the Guf. And here you have this interesting dynamic of the neshama needing to listen to the guf. Usually it's the hebech, right? The neshama is the mashmiya. The guf is just goylem. The guf doesn't have anything to say. But because of what we were hinting to a few minutes ago, when we spoke about how the highest point is connected to the lowest point, it actually turns out that the guf, and in Chabad, like this is a big, big Indian, the guf is even holier than the neshama, in a certain sense. There's this idea in Chabad that the Iker Bechira of Klal Yisrael was in the guf, not in the neshama of Klal Yisrael. There was daika in the guf. There's something different about the guf of Klal Yisrael, which has a very, very important mashmas, not for now. Unbelievable sugya that. The Bechira was in our guf. It's a practical Bechira. It's a Bechira that asks us to do something. It doesn't just say you're chosen ontologically because you're somehow different. It's a Bechira in the guf. Meaning, okay, I'm trying to explain. It's a very practical chosenness. You have to do something. You can't just sit back and say we're chosen. It's a Bechira in the guf, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be pile something in the Bechina of Dir B'Tachtonim. But because the Mata is bound up with the Mamala, and the Soif Masa is rooted in the Machshavat Chila, it actually turns out, and we're seeing this in current, psychology and maybe psychiatry. sometimes the body has more wisdom than the conscious mind. Sometimes there are messages that our body stores and can try to communicate to us in order to allow our conscious mind to understand something's not quite right. And it's the body. It's like it could be the gut, right? Sometimes the stomach is like and people who know this chachma know different parts of the body, different ailments, different things, different inyanim, different neurobiological systems, pathways that are indicating to us we have something to fix. So I heard from my friend Rabbi Yaakov Danishevsky, I'm not sure where he got this from. He said that's what it means, that in the final generation, Isha misaperes and Bala. The body will start to talk. We're going to learn the wisdom of the way that the body, which is the Bechina of Isha, is trying to communicate with the Bala, which is the Bechina of the Neshama. And we're going to respect that message. Yeah.
That's why we have so much anxiety now. We just don't know what it means. The guf is speaking.
It's in the
guf. We
guf.
have no clue what it's telling us.
Right.
The guf is speaking. For many people, it's can't sleep at night because the guf is speaking so much.
That's that book, right? The body keeps the score. That's right.
Every time Rabbi Wyman Jacobson references, he says straight away the body keeps the score. He references the book. I think he even had a podcast with this guy Vessel Vandal.
Yeah.
Yeah, who wrote that book.
So that's the big avodah, and that's like healing modalities that focus on the guf. It's like a whole different world. It's like we're bypassing, like we used to focus on cognition, and there's still practitioners, obviously, CBD and all these different things, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy and trying to work with the ways of thinking, narrative therapy and so on. But then they just say, just bypass the whole thing. Work with the body. Body work, breathing, sound, like all these different kinds of things that it's not logical, meaning it's not equine therapy, things that are just, it's not on the level of your conscious mind. It's just allowing the body to feel regulated and calm and safe. It's an amazing thing. The body is a conscious organism. It's just, it doesn't work in the same way that our brain works. It has a different language. And that's why sometimes when the body speaks, we don't quite know what it's saying because we can't interpret it. But, I think there's a growing body of literature and people who are trained to be able to interpret and to be able to communicate back and to tell the body what it needs to be told in the way that it needs to be told. So it's an amazing, amazing thing to think about. Like as we come to the end of Galus, one of the simanim is that Isha misaperes and Bala.
It's funny. It's like, is it kind of the opposite thing? The people you can learn from your body, like all these things. Like if you've got problems with your kidneys, it means there's a problem in your kaas, and it's a kind of it's the same. It's
connected.
Reverse.
Why is it reverse? That's very
exactly
similar. Pretty
no,
much.
No, the reason I'm saying is because then what's chal on me is like a practical avoider now. Or is it just? It's not just
I hear you.
Like
I hear you.
But also the acupuncture.
Yeah, it's a
both on the same
it's a chelik of it. I think it's a chelik of it.
But this is a whole. This is like a whole. I hate to say it like this. A whole other Torah of things that like no one knows. Like who knows this?
You can learn it. I have friends who do body work. You can learn it.
Like,
and even there's so many different, holistic healing. Like there's so many different modalities. But yeah, there's what to learn. Sure. That's a whole different avodah. Whole different. Because most of what we're focusing on is neshama, Yiddishkeit, person's way of thinking, emotions. This is a whole other thing. It's no talking. You come in and it's just working. It's communicating with the body, or it's just breathing and just allowing the body to feel regulated without any meditation on deep ideas. It's purely the guf, but it's Torah. It's Torah because again, what it's not communicating in words, because you're not talking to the body, which is another thing Rabbi Nachman speaks about, talking to the body. Rabbi Nachman has this.
From that world, Volga talks about speaking to body. He says, speak to body.
So here we're saying that even without words, or you're not actually verbally communicating with the body, through touch and different elements, you are communicating to the body in the way that the body, in the language that the body understands. Or you're communicating, you're safe, you're whole, you're okay. You know, like, which you can repeat those words a million times. If the body, if you're not convincing your body, it's not going to work. And I've found, like, even for myself, like I know a lot of stuff in this regard up here. Like, I've been learning these teachings for ages. There's still a level of me that they haven't reached, which is on the purely mamish, like, there's a word, somatic, maybe that. There's a level of my goof that's still stuck in trauma, deeply. So this is very close to my heart because I'm conscious of it.
The form of das, like actual.
Yeah, but deep das,
Yes,
like
yes.
deep, and that and in a certain sense that's ikar dir b'tachtonim,
Yes.
meaning on a personal level, when we're able to go ahead and to use these ideas to actually be able to impact the goof. I mean, that's it. That's you've brought the neshama down to ruach, which in your emotions, and down into nefesh, and that's what we were speaking about before. Paradoxically, the nefesh is the highest, but again, it's not nefesh that's the highest because it's mindless. When we're able to bring das down into the nefesh, you did it. That's the ikar tikkun, and that's our tikkun of our generation, right before the coming of Mashiach.
Doesn't Tanya say that the source of the nefesh balance is higher than the source of the nefesh likas?
Yeah, I think he does say it.
Some of those lines.
This word.
Don't remember that in Tanya, but
For some of those lines, the actual source of it, and the fact is the power of man is much stronger than human.
right, yeah.
Physically speaking,
Yeah.
because it comes from a stronger place or a higher place, some level.
Mm-hmm.
He speaks about the animal physicality of food and drink is rooted in a higher place
The
than
source,
Adam.
correct.
It's in a higher place. It's pre-reasons. It's interesting about Avraham Avinu that it says that he learned Torah. His two kloyos would flow and teach him Torah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that it's punkt Avraham Avinu that we see about him kol mashtem chasara, which means listen to your body.
Wow.
And it's the same Avraham Avinu
Beautiful.
that in the mornings we're learning all about bris and all about tikkun, and now we're learning that towards the end of all days, it's going to be the first Jew who's teaching us the end of all
Beautiful.
days.
Beautiful.
So-
B'chachaismin. Beautiful.
There you go.
Very deep. Very, very deep. Beautiful. And I'll also add, because you mentioned bris, that not bris, because we were talking about the Akedah earlier. The Akedah is the Inyan, right? Is because his body, right? All the Svarim say,
Right.
Yishlach Yadai,
This is
to
the
pick
Shabbat.
up the Machal. It's Kedushas Levi, it's Arkedah, it's many tzaddikim say this idea that he had to, because his body knew. His body was so aligned with the Ratzon Hashem that his body knew that Hashem didn't actually want him to Shach Yitzchak or refuse to move. He had to mamish force his body against the wisdom of the body to go.
The Friday that you came a bit late,
Yeah.
we were bragging about this Torah.
uh,
That's what we spoke about.
amazing. Okay, my body was telling me that morning that I just had to stay in bed.
Someone
So I had
say
to
that.
listen to my body. I couldn't. Give out. Okay, so we have to be aware. Like this is where we are in history. This is what the tikkun is, and we don't have time now to do the next piece. But that's our ikar avodah. We have to listen to the guf. Yeah, we have to listen to the guf. We have to move from nefesh up to ruach, up to neshama, and then to find ways to bring that R into our tefillah, so that our tefillah gets upgraded, even though we're davening for the little things, and then down into the bechina of nefesh. Then we're good, and we're going to actually be learning about this week. For many of the chevra, we're going to be learning Likud Torah Torah Lamed Gimel, Be'ezus Hashem, which really touches on a lot of these nekudas, inner peace between among a person's own self, right? And it begins with making peace with others, but it's really it's internal work. Should be zeicha to be healed, and to do the work, because we're doing the healing. Or why would Jacobson, says millions of times, we're healing all the dairis. They didn't have the yishav das. They didn't have the ability. They didn't have the modalities. They didn't have the das, and we have it. So it's all in our guf. Like we are the repository of tens and tens and tens of generations Like, it's a pella that a Jew could ever smile. It's a pella that I was just telling my guys in asthma. It's a pella that any human could smile. Once you realize this is the lowest of all worlds, Hashem is the most hidden from this world than any other olam, and you could still say good morning to someone and smile at them, like pella, such a pella. So now imagine a Jew who for forever has just suffered and suffered and suffered and passed on that suffering consciously, subconsciously, physically, genetically, until it came down to us. We have to cut ourselves a bit slack. You know how much we're holding? It's in us. Am I healing and doing the work that we need to do retroactively? You're bringing healing. Bra kara da'avua, like the Gemara says. We can make tikkunim for previous generations. And it's the Torah of Chasidus, it's the Torah of Geula, it's the Torah of compassion, it's the Torah of really deep healing. That maybe again starts up here, then hopefully comes down to our emotions, and then comes down further into our guf.
When you say that, you like kind of like referencing the concept, which is like, I mean, it's not I mean, lots of people believe it somewhat that people's emotional trauma and physical trauma and experiences and whatever essentially somehow ends up being essentially contained within their DNA, their cells, and without even us knowing it or it being anyone's attention, we as in the same way we carrying like recessive genes for ginger hair and blue eyes because we had a great grandma with ginger hair and blue, or whatever, that we're also essentially carrying traumas and experiences and whatever that are great grandmas essentially without us knowing.
I believe so.
Right.
I also believe that it's true spiritually, so not just on the DNA level, and I also, more than anything, I believe it's true culturally.
Yeah.
So I believe that, just forget genetics for a second, just on the level of fears and smallness, sheltered, ghettoized, pachad, like that book that I was mentioning, that was all about that. The way basically this person was raised by a father who survived the Holocaust, not in a camp. In 1943, 1944, his people were carted away from whatever village he had, and he ran off to the forest. And he dug himself a pit, and he lived in the pit for 3 years. So crazy like that. And when he came out, that's it. There's no one in the world but Jews. Can't trust anybody. Everyone's going to kill you, And he gave over this hashkafa to his son, and it was all about survival, and it was all about mistrusting, and he ended up like with Meir Kahane, and like a far-right extremist. Then the story is, it's called Memoirs of a Jewish Extremist. He got a little bit older and wiser, and he traveled the world, and he's like, this is just not the case. Like, we carry so much stuff from all the generations just on a level of chinuch, on a level of values, on a level of the urgency, for example, and the pressure and the hierarchy of values and things like that. We have to heal all of it.
If you don't say MS, Hashem will give you a punishment.
Yeah, all of this stuff. So there's a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. And I believe that as long as a person is in the mindset of doing the work and genuinely trying to grow and strive, and you're the crowning jewel of God's creation. We're doing what we need to do, but we have to do it. And in today's generation, we can finally do it. There's healing, real healing. So that's our bracha. Should make it to dawn. We should make it to v'sachazena inenu. Shuv chalitziim barachamim. Be'ezras Hashem. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you.
ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני